This was a championship game befitting of the occasion. Fireworks, plenty of controversy. Pretty much every ingredient that you would put into a championship classic was in this one. Some questionable officiating, some really interesting spells of play, physicality, real battles all over the pitch. And fundamentally, Norwich City have come out of it with a win. They've beaten Rotherham United here today by 2-1. It's a win that takes them up to 4th. It's a win that means they're now 3 unbeaten, 2 wins in their last 3 games after what was a really tough run of form for everybody. And a win, actually, that probably displayed some minerals that we haven't seen from this Norwich City team in recent weeks. And a win that certainly will leave everyone, including people in the away end, which was over there off camera, feeling a little bit happier on their way home, because it was 3 points that Norwich City really had to work for, really had to earn, and they've been able to do that. Let's start with the team news. Dean Smith went for a slightly different shape. We were kind of looking at the team news, wondering what it would look like, wondering what the formation would be. Josh Sargent obviously came back, and it was a bold decision. Dean Smith went for that 4-3-1-2, which worked quite well in the opening of I want to say it was Preston, but I may be wrong. Certainly of a game during that difficult run. It was then kind of abandoned after a poor result, but there were signs of promise. And those two up front together, it's just a prospect that really, makes your mouth water, I think, and makes opposition defenders really struggle, and particularly at times because of the way Rotherham played, and they committed men forward. When Norwich City did win the ball in transition, they created a kind of a 2v2 at the back, and they were able to have opportunities through their attacking players. And because of the narrowness of their formation, they played, as I said, a 3, which was Sarah Hayden and Kenny McLean, with Aaron Ramsey in front of those. Because they played quite narrow, it gave more licence to, coupled with obviously Isaac Hayden, who we'll get into in a minute. His positioning and his defensive awareness allowed Norwich City's fullbacks to push on and gave them a bit more width and threat. And basically, they went man for man against the wing backs. And you have to say, across this game, Norwich City won that battle, but also they won a lot of the other battles as well. And when I looked at that team, and there was obviously some omissions, Todd Cantwell was out, Liam Gibbs was out, Onel Hernandez was out. It looked to me like a setup designed to cope with the physicality that Rotherham would place onto this game, but also to provide an energy, to provide a fluency, to press in a more competent way. And I actually felt for vast periods of this game, that midfield, the way it was constructed, the way it was kind of designed, did the purpose that it was set out to do. And it really helped, particularly, as I said, when Norwich, often Isaac Hayden, turned over possession, they were able to then go and respond. And obviously you see that through the third goal, because Sarah and McLean were allowed and invited to go and join attacking in phases of play. They could create overloads in the penalty area, and Kenny McLean obviously popped up with the opening goal. So that, in terms of a system, gave Norwich more creativity, even if necessarily you don't agree with the personnel necessarily that were selected within it. It gave them a lot more fluency, a lot more options. It was a lot more versatile, I felt, in terms of the way it acted in and out of possession. And actually, Norwich looked a better side for it. It's the first time in a few weeks, actually, that Norwich have played Josh Sargent and Timu Pukki and looked a real fluid attacking outfit. Whereas, when they've tried to shoehorn Sargent on the right, and it's not criticism of him because he's been fantastic this season, but it does stifle a little bit of what they're trying to do. And this was a game where the game plan that they came in and executed worked to perfection pretty much, because they were willing to let Rotherham have the ball in areas that didn't hurt them. This was control, actually. We've used that word a lot in recent weeks. This was relatively controlled from Norwich. They allowed Rotherham the ball in certain areas. They wanted to go and press when Richard Wood had the ball, or when they worked the ball to a wide position. They did that with much more effectiveness, much more vigour, much more energy. And those turnovers, as I said, allowed them to create opportunities in the first half, and they were happy just to sit, to absorb pressure, and to spring on the counter, to dominate those transitions and go and create opportunities. And they did just that, and that's largely because of the energy that Gabriel Sara and Kenny McLean brought to this team from midfield. And obviously the way the fullbacks came forward. I thought Sam McCallum and Max Aarons really had good games. I thought Sam McCallum tired a little bit towards the end, understandable given obviously the context of him coming back. Particularly Max Aarons on the right side was very good. And actually the first goal comes from that. Gabriel Sara, brilliant play down the right. Great perseverance, lovely bit of play from Max Aarons, I think it was, to play him in. Drives into the box. He then gets dispossessed. Timu Pukki's shot deflects into the air, and Kenny McLean's at the back post from close range to nod it in. It's a good goal for for him to score personally, he's taken a lot of criticism as he tends to, and I'll get onto that again later. He's had to play out of position. He's just come back from a suspension. He doesn't score many, to be frank. He wants to score more. We spoke to him post-match, and it was a good opportunity for him personally when a lot of people have been questioning his selection. I felt he, alongside Isaac Hayden, gave Norwich City, and Gabriel Sara gave Norwich City a real good balance in those areas. And thereafter, it became a little bit of an arm wrestle. Rotherham tried to make the game a certain way. Norwich City tried not to engage with that, but they were able to roll their sleeves up and prevent it from becoming the type of game that Rotherham wanted. And that's not a criticism of Rotherham, because I think this is quite a different Rotherham under Matt Taylor to what we would see under Paul Warne. They're more willing to keep possession. They want to be a bit more progressive on the ball, a bit more positive. They're less direct. And they probably don't utilise set pieces. I know they've scored a lot from, and Millwall have scored more, I think, from set pieces this season, certainly prior to this game. They don't feel as much of a threat, and that's probably largely down to the work that Norwich City are doing on those as well. So thought Norwich managed them well largely. Obviously the goal comes from a mistake for all of Gabriel Sara's excellence, and I thought he was Norwich City's best player in the first half, to be completely honest. This was maybe a realisation of the adaptation and the work he still has to go through to adapt to English football, because after a really good first half, he plays a pass, doesn't get his head up, doesn't look. It's a blind pass right across the middle of the pitch. Ollie Rathbone picks up on it. There are obviously areas Norwich City don't get tight enough to him. I think it was Grant Hanley stood off him a little bit. That allowed him to just shift the ball onto his other foot and find the bottom corner. And from there, I think everyone was going, uh-oh, because it was a Norwich City mistake. We've seen the narrative before. We've seen how games after a mistake from Norwich City transition and how they go. The momentum felt with Rotherham after the break. They came out very quickly. They were clearly keen to kind of right the wrongs of the first half, where their intensity maybe hadn't been where Matt Taylor would have liked it to be. And it felt quite a precarious moment for Norwich, because the momentum was kind of with them. This home crowd was with them. And even though there's only 10,000, or just over 10,000, and 2,000 of those were Norwich City fans in this place, they are, because of the proximity of the stands to the pitch, able to create a really good atmosphere and able to kind of get on top of it and kind of suck the game up, I suppose, and have a real influence on proceedings. And they did that, and it contributed to the goal. And that's why it was so important that Norwich City got their response pretty much immediately, because it prevented that momentum from building, and it actually served as a real hammer blow to what Rotherham were doing. And after so much work and so much sort of positivity at the start of the half to claw themselves back into the contest, they were behind again. And it was again, Sargent's shot after some brilliant work from Aaron Ramsey to feed the ball through to him. Drives inside, it's a brilliant run towards goal, really positive. His shot takes a deflection. Johansson is kind of wrong-footed, but manages to get a hand to it. There's a little bit of anger, I think, certainly from these fans about Timu Puki's challenge. I didn't feel it was a foul, to be completely honest. It falls to Ramsey, who continued his run superbly to put it into the back of the net. I think it was 45 seconds later. And that really, in that minute, just sucked all of the energy out of what Rotherham had done in the previous 5 minutes. It was such an important goal at such an important time, and they were able to do that. And from there, again, it became about how Norwich managed this contest. And Rotherham had the ball, but they had the ball in areas Norwich City would have been happy with them having the ball in. Norwich controlled the ball out of possession. Ogbeni on the right side, I felt, was lively and was really the only credible threat in terms of what Rotherham were trying to do. Probably felt like they wanted a bit more agility up front because of injuries, obviously, to Connor Washington and then to Georgie Kelly. They were forced to put on Tom Eaves, who isn't the type of striker who is particularly dynamic. He kind of, and that's, again, not a criticism of him, he's just not that type of player. He's big, he's physical, he gets on the end of crosses, and Norwich were actually doing really well at limiting the crossing positions and the crossing moments that Rotherham had. And again, I speak about control. We use that word a lot with Norwich City. That's control. That's controlling the game. That's controlling your opposition to play a certain way. And it felt like they did that today. And that's why probably people are coming to a conclusion of this performance being certainly a real positive. And it wasn't what maybe people want to see in terms of energy, or maybe energy is the wrong word, but maybe in terms of quality, maybe in terms of Norwich City playing a team off the park. But actually, this wasn't the sort of game that would have allowed Norwich to do that. It was a case of having to roll up your sleeves, to graft, to be dogged, to be hardworking, to make the most of transitional moments. And they could have killed the game off towards the end. But just made the wrong passing decision or didn't quite get in the right position at the right time to do that. And so that meant they had to manage, and they probably dropped off the game a little bit too early, and that invited Rotherham to play some of those longer balls into the box, but they dealt with that quite well. And again, I'm going to get into the officiating, but they didn't let that aspect of it affect them either. They managed this well. It was a mature performance. It was an experienced performance. It was actually a performance of a team towards the top of the table, capable of kind of winning in different ways. And if there's one thing actually that we've seen from this Norwich City team across this season, is they're really good at doing that on the road. Sunderland, Blackpool come to mind. 2 wins that were in a similar fashion, maybe not as much of a physical contest in terms of pure arm wrestle, pure battle, pure duels. But this was a difficult challenge, and it always is when you come to Rotherham, and they've managed to overcome that and find a way to overcome that, and that ultimately is a real positive. Even if particularly now it doesn't necessarily change my opinion of what this Norwich City team is, or even where they'll finish towards the end of the season. But you take this on an individual basis, what the challenge presented, what was in front of them. I think this will give everyone a massive confidence boost of what this Norwich City team can do and how it can win in perhaps different ways. So that was good. Let's get on to the officiating. I don't like to use these to talk about officials, to be honest, because I feel some of as a firework goes off behind me, I feel there's obviously a lot of criticism and a lot said about officials, and a lot of the time it's unfair, a lot of the time it's exaggerated, a lot of the time there's an element of people looking through it with glasses of whatever team they support. That will be the case today. But there was some really bizarre decisions, and that was for both sides. So at least Dean Whitestone was consistent in that. Norwich City should have had a penalty in the second half down here. I think the only people in this stadium who couldn't see that was a handball were the officials. Max Aarons' cross, the arm's up there. It hits it. It's a clear penalty, clear as day. It's not a natural position for the arm to be in. It was just shocking, really, that wasn't given. There was then one in the first half, which on Josh Sargent. I haven't watched any of these back, by the way, so I might watch them back tomorrow and be willing to correct myself. But Josh Sargent gets away. I think it's from Richard Wood quite early on. He's through on goal. He goes down. My colleague at Radio Norfolk, Chris Gorham, has told me that he's seen it back and he didn't feel there was much in it. I'm willing to go with him. I just find it a really bizarre situation that Josh Sargent's willing to go down in that situation when he was through on goal and had an opportunity to score a goal that would have put Norwich City ahead at that point. So that felt strange, but maybe that's on Josh Sargent rather than the official. There were lots of niggly ones. There was a one down here from Lindsay that should have been a yellow card. Sam McCallum should have been booked over the other side for dragging a man down, and actually was probably quite fortunate that he wasn't, because he went on to get booked quite later on. And I understand this kind of idea that officials want to let games flow, but there were some really weird, questionable decisions just across the game, but also the management of it, the positioning that he took up at times wasn't particularly great. Again, I don't want to be too critical. It was just odd. One decision that he did get right, and it's worth to say that for balance, was the one towards the end where Benny goes down in the box, almost sort of pushes his body into Isaac Hayden, initiates the contact, goes down. It was a dive. It was a yellow card. And, as poor as he was for everyone today, didn't warrant a bottle coming down from the stands. That's stupid. That's moronic behaviour to throw a bottle at an official, and he doesn't deserve that. He had a poor game. He's human. He made mistakes. I've seen him referee earlier this season, I think, in an Norwich game, and he wasn't as bad as he was today. So maybe this was an off day. Perhaps I haven't seen him enough to comment, but not good. On a more positive note, Isaac Hayden, I thought he was absolutely superb today. I've just jumped there at a firework. Thought he was, for someone who has a phobia of fireworks, these are not ideal conditions, but we'll power through. Isaac Hayden, superb, positionally excellent, adds a real experience, just happy to sit and does the basics really well, reads the game well, wins important tackles, gets to the ball first in really important moments. This was his best performance I've seen so far in a Norwich City shirt, and probably reiterated the importance of why they were so keen to sign him, but also why there's been so much patience shown through his injury, because if they can keep him up to them levels, it's difficult because of the sheer amount of games, and obviously they've got a World Cup break to kind of nurse him and get him back up to full speed. But if they can do that, they've got a really integral player in their side, I feel, because he's someone who wins the ball and gives it to get better players, and that sounds like or more creative players. And it sounds like a real simplistic description of his job, but it's so important to how a team functions. And you look at all the top teams in the world, all of them have a player in that position very good at what they do. Manchester City have Rodri. Liverpool have had Fabinho, Jordan Henderson, etc. It's been a little bit different, obviously, this season. Leicester, when they won the league, had N'Golo Kante. There are numerous examples. Barcelona has Sergio Busquets for such a long time. Casemiro at Real Madrid. Obviously, he's now at Manchester United. Good teams have players like him in them. And actually, he brings a real physicality, a real size, a real presence, a real leadership. And for a game like that, they needed him in there. They needed that calming head, that experienced presence just to manage it, just to manage those around him as well. Some of the positions he took up defensively were immense. Some of the headers he won, tackles he won, interceptions he won. Just something that we haven't seen from a Norwich City midfielder this year. And if they can do that, they're going to be much tighter defensively as a result. And it also, with him in there, gives more license, as I said earlier, for Max Aarons, for whoever is at left back, to go and advance forward and to go and join attacking phases of play. That's really important. Who else do I want to mention? I've spoken about Gabriel Sara. Marcelino Nunez wasn't here today. He was injured. So too was Sam Byram. Timu Pukki, industrious. It's just not falling for him at the moment. It will come. He's working so hard. I felt he was really good on Wednesday night against QPR. Didn't quite get rewarded with a goal. Didn't quite sit for him here today. But yeah, a performance that I hope will lift the mood. It should. Again, as I said, it hasn't changed my perception of what this Norwich City team is. I think it will be in and around the playoffs. But in a division where, and we saw Burnley obviously lose to Sheffield United today, I think QPR lost and Watford lost. No one's grabbing the initiative. If Norwich City can grind out a bit of consistency, they are going to get themselves in touching distance. And if they, as Dean Smith said, he put a target of 6 points on this. They're halfway there over the next 2 games before the World Cup break. If they can enter the break in that position, and I've used that word positioning and position a lot, if they can do that heading into the break, they will have a real chance if this division stays as it is, because it is so wide open. There is a lack of team really grabbing it and grasping it. And I don't think this team is going to be the one that does that. But there's no reason why they can't keep themselves in the hunt, in the mix, and really solidify what they are. I don't think we've really learned anything today. Norwich are a better team than Rotherham. They're better players than Rotherham. And that wasn't necessarily why they won here today, as I've just spent the last 17 minutes talking about. But there are tougher tests down the road in terms of their promotion credentials. And it's we're going to get those after the World Cup break, notably with Russell Martin, Swansea, and then Blackburn. But hopefully, as Dean Smith said, this will calm the waters of everybody, and it will settle nerves. Just finally, Kenny McLean, I said I wanted to speak about him. Gets so much criticism. I think a lot of it is unwarranted, to be honest. I don't think he's a bad footballer. I think he needs more respect. I think his performance today displayed why he deserves more respect. Took his goal well. So important for what Norwich City did and how they functioned. And just lay off Kenny a little bit, I think. One of the players who, of course, is out of contract. Right, I'm going to go before the fireworks really get in and I start to disintegrate before your eyes, because I will do that. Fireworks not my thing. Thank you all very much for watching. Pinkin.com and, of course, the Pinkin Plus app, the place to go. Hopefully this has been relatively coherent and not just a massive ramble. Get to an Anderson shelter. Yeah, absolutely. That's where I'll be heading. Thank you all very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday evening. Finally, really finally, nearly forgot it. Brilliant win for Kingsland Town today in the FA Cup. They've beaten League Two Doncaster Rovers 1-0. I think goal on Matoyo in the 83rd minute. They're into the hat for the second round of the FA Cup. Brilliant achievement. What a job Tommy Witherington's doing. What a day for Norfolk in Yorkshire. Signing off. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.